I spent 2 years building an AI recruiter and then I shut it down. Tell us a little bit about what was the thinking process behind setting up this AI recruiter, what you tested, and then what you found out and why you took it down.
What I would call product market fit, right? Now, all of the companies, of course, they want to have an AI headhunter because they see the benefits of cost reduction and speed and everything else. But when you talk to candidates, it is the very last thing that they want. They do not want to talk to an AI when they're interviewing. Interviewing is a very emotional process. It is a huge decision. I always say there's really 3 things that majorly affect your life. One is your partner and who you choose to spend most of your time with. Number 2 is your physical and mental health. And number 3 is the job that you have, right? So it's a big decision. And we found that, people don't want to be interviewed by an AI and they don't want to be treated as a number.
The idea of job security is outdated as a landline. If you haven't been in a search for a while, it's probable you will at some point, by choice or not. Most executives admit to staying way too long or sense what's coming and justify staying anyway. There's another reason. The faulty belief that navigating to what's next will inevitably be worse and has to suck. Screw that. Lauren Greif has spent a lifetime in corporate and executive search, calling bullshit on stale career advice that most still use. This is Career Blast in a Half, the career podcast for executives ready to cut past outdated career advice to fuel your outcomes now. So let's go.
I'm so excited to bring you this episode. This is not your regular episode because we've brought in Joseph Burns. I actually found him through a fascinating post, and I'll share a little bit with you in a minute. But the cliff notes here is that he built the perfect AI recruiter, and then he shut it down. So Joseph is actually in Mexico City. He's planted there, and his firm is an amazing effort to actually headhunt Latin talent. And he's going to tell you a little bit more about not only what his company does, but most specifically, why this post went viral and why coming from engineering and a completely different area outside of recruiting, why he did what he did and what he found. So Joseph, we are so happy to have you. And I only wish I was in Mexico City right now because not only is it such a fantastic place, it is hopping and happening. So thanks for joining today.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. And of course, Lauren, if you ever find your way to Mexico City, I'll show you around, okay?
Yes. I'm so in on this. I am just a little curious, like, why did you move there? Why did you decide to focus in on Latin talent? And why did you shut down this AI recruiter?
Yeah, so my story is kind of a long one. I wanted to go abroad from a very young age, and most of it was in pursuit of a basketball career. I found myself in Portugal, and I started learning Portuguese because I didn't like the fact that everyone said, oh, Americans, they never learn any languages, and I wanted to prove them wrong. So after I left Portugal, I kept studying, and I learned Portuguese, I learned Spanish, and I was working in a couple high-profile tech jobs in the States, and I kind of just felt bored. Like, this is it. Like, I have a fancy condo, I have a fancy car, I go to a fancy gym and country club, I live in Chicago, and I was like, this is it? This is all really? And I got a phone call from a company called Rappi that now is the biggest non-public tech company, aka startup in Latin America. And they called me because they were looking for people who were experienced in 2 things, product and basically big architecture systems like search, personalization. And they called me, and I was bored with the corporate environment. Lots of rules, lots of red tape, lots of meetings to get a simple thing done. And they caught me on the right day, honestly. And they told me, well, why don't you come to Colombia and work with us? It's chaotic and you'll have to figure everything out on your own and you're going to learn a lot. And I had never been to Colombia before. And so I took the job and went to Colombia. And then through Rappi, I worked, Rappi is the company that I went to work for. I went to Sao Paulo, I went to Buenos Aires, and then eventually, after spending 3 years full time in Bogota, I wanted a different taste. And lots of people were going to Mexico City. And I knew that it was a great place for me to network and learn and continue to be entrenched in the LATAM community. And here I am, 6 years later, after getting a random phone call from a headhunter. I am one. And yeah, life comes at you fast.
So I love this because, first of all, huge risk taking, and I appreciate that. I love that you didn't know what you were doing, but you were destined to figure it out. And I also love that you're learning other languages. That's a big thing for me too, because I think it's just the coolest to be able to converse in multiple languages. So you're actually recruiting in a different language, the language of AI, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
actually like a foreign body speaking another
Yes.
language. And so could you share with us, I will of course include the link to the post that had, I don't even know, I lost track of how many comments it had, but I'm sure you probably know the exact number of impressions that it had. But all I know is that it had this, of course, beautiful blonde woman. And it said something along the lines of, I spent 2 years building an AI recruiter and then I shut it down. So tell us a little bit about what was the thinking process behind setting up this AI recruiter, what you tested, and then what you found out and why you took it down.
Yeah. So first things first, I got to give a shout out to my content team. They spend a lot of time and a lot of effort helping me find my voice. And, the post did really well. And I think it resonated with people, right?
Totally.
And I knew that there was a way to speed up recruiting. And I knew that AI could augment things. But the really tough part for me is what I would call product market fit, right? Now, all of the companies, of course, they want to have an AI headhunter because they see the benefits of cost reduction and speed and everything else. But when you talk to candidates, it is the very last thing that they want. They do not want to talk to an AI when they're interviewing. Interviewing is a very emotional process. It is a huge decision. I always say there's really 3 things that majorly affect your life. One is your partner and who you choose to spend most of your time with. Number 2 is your health, right? Physical and mental health. And number 3 is the job that you have, right? So it's a big decision. And we found that, people don't want to be interviewed by an AI and they don't want to be treated as a number. So my story is basically I was working at Rappi. And when I was there, my biggest problem really wasn't a normal problem for a product manager or a product leader. I knew exactly what I wanted to build. I knew exactly how I was going to build it, but it was a very complex system. We operated with, billions of products, millions of stores, 3 different languages, 9 different countries. I think it was over 60 cities that we operated in. We needed to build a complex architecture, right? And I wasn't happy with the headhunters that I was working with. My HR team was overwhelmed. And so I took over all of recruiting. One guy that I really admired when I worked at Facebook was Chris Cox. He was the CPO of Facebook, but he famously took over recruiting and made talent acquisition something that he really prioritized. And even on my first day at the company, he came and gave the speech about what the company culture meant. So it was something important. And something that he did is he took that over. And so when I was at Rappi, I realized that I had to figure out hiring because I'm only as good as the team that I have. So long story short is we were pretty successful in hiring a lot of people and Rappi has gone on to be an incredible success story. And I think it's all because of the people that were there. While we were at Rappi, lots of people started their own companies that worked at Rappi before, and they remembered that I was the guy that figured out recruiting. And they started to call me and ask me to help them, right? Now, what I quickly realized that I actually like this recruiting side of things. I love this recruiting business. I love the idea of taking someone and finding them an opportunity and putting them in a place that was going to make them happy, that was going to impact their family. And that just felt a lot more meaningful to me than delivering groceries in 10 minutes, right? So long story short, once I had picked up enough clients and was making enough money, I felt comfortable to go out on my own. And I wanted to start a business. And a lot of my mentors said, Joe, let's start something a little bit bigger. We think that you're well positioned to raise money. And so what I had landed on was I thought that there was a huge opportunity in AI and in recruiting, right? And so that's what we raised the money on. And I went down the path. I had over $1 million to spend, and I had all the ambition in the world. And when I looked at recruiting, I look at it as a funnel. So basically there's the preparation that goes into getting to know the clients. There's the sourcing, there's the outreach, there's the interviewing, there's the presentation of candidates, and there's basically pushing them through the flow. The biggest time-consuming problem for recruiters is sourcing. How do you find the candidates? How do you reach out to the candidates? How do you schedule with the candidates, right? And the biggest problem that I had over a year is that I could never build an AI that was better than me with a Boolean search. Right? So that was one thing in terms of sourcing.
I'd love you to repeat that, because Boolean searching, right, which is like old school recruiting, right? You create these Boolean strings. I used to call it internet algebra, right? And you use those filters to find candidates. And what you're saying is that none of these AI recruiting tools have ever, exceeded your expectations in terms of what the old school methodology was delivering.
Yes. So warning, I'm about to get a little bit nerdy, but I'll try to explain it in the most simple manner that I can. So LLMs, basically, whenever you use them, you get charged by how many tokens that you use. So what they're really good at doing is asking a simple question and giving a very long answer. But what isn't very well suited for an LLM is reading tons of information and then processing it, because you pay for what information the LLM is reading. So that's like one very big restriction. Obviously, things are getting a little bit better on that side, but that's one really big restriction in terms of sourcing and finding candidates, right? The other one is that there's a whole look and feel that companies are looking for, right? I won't match up a very buttoned up finance company with someone that has nose piercings and tattoos, right? I know that there is a certain matchmaking element of it. So I think that's another difficult one. But long story short, after a year, I figured out that sourcing wasn't it. Then I started looking into, well, what if I just have the AI do the interview? The problem there is we did a test where we took a role, many roles, and we did it with humans and we did it with AIs. What we noticed is that with the AIs, most of the good candidates don't show up, right? Or they're not interested in interviewing with an AI, or they have a bad experience, or they ghost people. Why? Because it's pretty easy to ghost an AI. And I think that what companies don't realize is that when you do put an AI to interview someone, one, you're creating a huge negative selection bias, because only people that are desperate and maybe not as good are going to be willing to go through that process. And then number two, you're going to end up hiring people that know how to game the AI, right? It's pretty easy to trick a robot.
So this is what AI gets wrong and why it matters, because what I'm hearing you say is that there's like data on one side and then there's human intuition on the other. And my intuition says, I'm not talking to this here robot. This is a big decision, as you already set up, right? This is like how I'm going to spend a third of my life is working. And if this is my first or second or third contact, I'm out. And the only people that are going to hang around there are people that are just, clinging on to, the
whatever options
that they have. So how does this manifest then in terms of the longer term impact with maybe cultural misfires or algorithm biases? How does this, if we were to keep that in there, or other companies that are using this, how does that impact the decision making and the culture of the organization?
Yeah, so long story short is I don't know, but there are some anecdotes and there's some funny stories out there. I'm sure a lot of people have heard about the story where someone built an AI recruiter for a finance business. And what they determined was that the best indicator of having a candidate that was a great choice was that their name was Jared and they played high school lacrosse, right? So you can imagine all of the, the gender bias that goes into that, the racial bias that goes into that. And I think that while people think that AIs are going to be less biased, you have to remember that they're trained on humans and they often don't understand what bias they have, and that there's a lot of secondary effects. It's not always the first thing at the first layer that you're looking at, it's like, well, what does that mean a few layers down? So lacrosse players, they happen to be young white guys, right? So are we contributing to bias or not? And I think that's a really funny story, and you hear it over and over again, and there's a lot of research done on it. It's worth looking up.
Yeah, for sure. I am blowing the lid off of our best kept secret, our 30-day blast program. Yeah, you heard it. 30 days. We have seen so much success for this program that past clients have landed in that 30 days and increased their compensation 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, over 100%. Now, not everybody lands and earns that much in 30 days, but my point is it prepares you. And in 30 days, if you're not out of there with a changed mindset and changed, clear and simple ways to be able to navigate the market this year, then we'll gladly refund your misery and you can go back to applying now. Check out the link below for the next 30-day blast, and we would love to have you there because we live for your success, and that's what's really important. See you then. Let's just pretend for a minute that I'm an executive and I'm going through this process, and, I have an AI recruiter and I'm really interested in this company. So I'm going to go through this bot process. What should I be looking for by way of any red flags because I'm not going to see where the biases are on the backside. So is there a way for me to sniff out any red flags before I get to the bot and opt out? Does that eliminate me from the entire opportunity at that company? Is that candidacy dead?
So you mean that from a candidate perspective?
Correct.
Or from a hiring
Correct.
manager perspective?
From a candidate perspective.
So I think with the candidates, what you can do is you can know how the AI works and how you can play with it to your advantage, right? So if you look at the job description, go load your CV with the job description, right? You can also have a very good idea of what questions are going to be asked to you by an AI because they kind of shoot out very similar answers to say, okay, what questions are they going to ask me based on this JD, and prepare. And then what you should do is make sure that your storytelling is authentic and real, but also adapted to those keywords because they're looking for certain buzz phrases that you're going to say and certain ways that you're going to answer the questions. So I think it's pretty easy to game the AI. You can anticipate the questions. And really what I would see the AI is just a filter that you have to get through to get to the real part of the interview, right? And also know that they're probably going to watch the video, right? So make sure that you show up and you're formally dressed, you're smiling, you're having good body language, because while there might not be a human on the other side, that human might watch that video later. So good to be aware of that.
Mm-hmm. And so typically at what stage can we, at the very early stage, when should we expect the intro to the bot? And how long does that continue?
Yeah, I think the bot will probably come at the early stages because it's more of a filtering process, right? But honestly, I think for senior roles, it's a terrible practice. If you're looking to hire 400 people for a call center or something like that, I understand that for massive recruiting or recruiting that involves recruiting the same role many, many times, that it can be effective. And I think that's really the only situation where I might recommend it. But I think that generally for executive search or something that's very high level, it's a big misfire because you just need to get it right. It's not about saving 20 minutes here or there, right? It's about getting it right because it's so important to pick the right people and hire the right people. And people often forget that good recruiting is 50% finding the right person, but 50% convincing the other person to change their job and come join you.
Mm-hmm. Right. That assumes that they're passive, right? Passive candidates who are already in jobs, right? And so sadly and true, oftentimes that is a bias. If you are passively in a job, you can be considered, in some cases, more valuable or more desirable just because they're plucking you from a said competitor or another highly competitive company. So
that's human psychology.
That is human psychology. Exactly. The law of scarcity. I want that person, and because they're unavailable. So, one of the other things that I would love to know is, given the fact that you have removed this AI recruiter from your system, what is the replacement process? What have you put in lieu of that? And how does AI find its place within that recruiting process whereby those higher level and more important decisions are not impacted?
Yeah, so I think that AI is most useful at the research phase of things, right? So let's say we have a client that's opening a new role and they're in a sector that we're not familiar with, or they have some very particular requirements that are extremely technical that our team hasn't seen before. We use AI to deeply research and understand what is the root of the problem that we're solving as recruiters. Because oftentimes as a recruiter, you get thrown into many, many different roles and you don't understand them. So I think the research phase and really understanding the role, the business problem, and then coming up with really, really good questions and what the answers might be to those questions. It's very helpful for a recruiter because you could probably do 30 minutes of AI research and come out with a better outcome than if you did 8 hours of research on your own. So I think it's a really valuable tool to get a deeper understanding of the business and what the
I
business
love
needs.
that because sadly, again, a lot of people think that it's just a recruiter interview. And in many cases, the bias is because they don't really know the role, right? That person's a gatekeeper early on. They're not necessarily subject matter experts within that specific area of knowledge. And so what I think I hear you saying is this is to fortify those people to be able to understand how to better vet the candidates that are in less known areas of business.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're a hiring manager and you're looking to hire someone, it's your responsibility to make sure that the recruiter understands the role really well. And then if you're going to go out and pay outside help or a headhunter, I would make sure that they really, really understand your business because otherwise they're going to waste your time. I mean, the worst thing that you can do as a recruiter is pass candidates that don't work. It puts a huge burden on the organization because it's very expensive for the team to have to interview these people. And also it hurts your brand reputation when you're interviewing candidates and it doesn't work out. Generally not getting a job is a negative experience, right? So it's up to the recruiter to present people that really are going to work well, right?
For sure. Putting AI aside, right? Let's just pretend for a minute that you personally are back in the game, right? You've seen behind the scenes, and let's just say, you're an executive and you're in a job search or career transition right now. What is your best advice for people you're seeing these people come through your system every single day. What is the hell yeah or hell no that is helping to be able to vet them? And also, what would you do if you were on the other side today, knowing what you know about the ins and outs of AI?
So people come to me all the time asking for advice on, how do I get a job, or I'm having this sort of struggle. And what I always tell them is that I would do this even if I wasn't getting paid for it, and I love doing it. So I'm very happy to help, and I'm glad you asked this question because for me, it's like part of my mission and my core values of what drives me forward. And I think the main thing that I always tell people is you can never be too aggressive in your job search. It doesn't exist, right? And I think that you have to treat it like a sales process. You have to go through, what is the sales funnel? Okay, how do I build my product? And how do I build my website and my landing page, which is your LinkedIn, your CV, your photo, your presentation? How do I make my product, which is me, as attractive as possible to the outside? Then, how do I figure out who my ICP is, my ideal customer profile? So what are the companies that are actually going to benefit from my services and they're going to benefit from me? And make a list of them, right? Then the other part is, who are the decision makers? Hint, it is not clicking on apply now on LinkedIn. That is not the way you get a job, okay? And I think the main thing that you need to do is identify those decision makers and reach out to them. Try to have conversations with them. Try to get something interesting in front of them that makes them want to talk to you. And remember, they're a human being, right? So try to talk to them. Try to get a conversation with them. And most human beings, they like to help other human beings. That's what makes us different from a lot of species, right? So I think the main thing there is treat it like a sales process. Know that there's a funnel. Know that you have to find the companies that you want to work for. You have to find the the people that are internally inside of those companies that make those decisions, and don't just rely on HR. Look to the people that are already in the position that you want. Look to the leadership in that organization. Talk to them directly. And remember that just like a good salesperson needs to make a certain number of cold calls, a certain number of cold outreach, you need to do the same thing. And know that it is a huge decision. It is something that's really going to factor into the quality of your life, how much money you make, how much you like your job. We spend, 40, 50, 60 hours, sometimes a week there. And I think take it seriously, treat it like the most important sales process of your entire life.
I love that you said that there is no such thing as being too aggressive, because at this stage, many, many, many people have been plucked at the senior level. They have the novelty or the aha or even the it's not what it used to be is based off of an expectation that somehow, some way, there was going to be a more turnkey process. And more recently, I was putting a post together and I said, it's not going back to the way it was. Like, the hiring market is permanently changed. And yes, some of that is due to AI, right?
You have direct access to every person at every single company through LinkedIn. Go talk to them, right? And remember, don't get discouraged if a bunch of people say no, because you only need one yes, right? One yes.
That's
one
right.
is all it takes.
You are absolutely singing my praises. Any other message that you want to share with job seekers, especially those, and I recognize that this may not necessarily be your sweet spot, those who are over 40 or 45, who are finding themselves in a situation where they are maybe being pushed out of technology or being compromised in the interview process for being, said to be overqualified or not necessarily as valued as they used to be.
Yeah, so I think the number one thing that I would do is don't blame your age or blame the situation, because while it might be a factor, it is not going to help you, right? And I think that the main thing that you can do that is so easy is record your interviews, listen to them, have a friend listen to them, have someone that is going to give you brutal feedback on the way you answered every question, listen to them. And I think you have to treat it like you would a product development lifecycle. Iterate, right? Get feedback, learn, and remember that, one outcome isn't going to define you and shouldn't define you. And just to keep trying, keep iterating, keep trying new things and figure out what it is that is going to match up. Obviously, there's a million resources out there that are going to tell you, okay, you need to have good lighting. You need to learn about the latest technologies. Yes, do all of that stuff. But most importantly, treat it like a product lifecycle. And if you never read about the product lifecycle, go read about it. Because really, it's an iterative process and you just need to test and experiment. And all you need is one yes.
All you need is one yes. I love this. So we are so grateful that you not only tested it, but also uncovered the reasons why that human-to-human connection is so unbelievably important in the recruiting process for both sides. I would love for you to give a message out to people who are either on the recruiting side or on the hiring side with respect to one thing that they should be doing differently with respect to either AI or their hiring processes as we're gearing up for the fall and peak hiring.
Yeah, I think the main thing to remember is that it's all about quality. You do not want to sacrifice speed for quality in something that is so, so critical, right? Who you hire is going to determine the success or failure of your organization. Anyone will tell that. Every entrepreneurship book will tell you that. So if you want to cut corners somewhere, don't do it here, right? It's a terrible idea. You're setting yourself up for failure, and the cost of a bad hire are very expensive. And I think, obviously use AI to make your process better. Use AI to make sure you're asking better questions. You're evaluating candidates better. You're reviewing information about the business or what kind of requirements there are and what kind of questions you should be asking, what kind of answers you're looking for. But don't send a bot out there to do the work for you, because it's the most critical work. Would you have a robot pick your wife or your husband? No. So don't have them pick your coworker either, because those relationships are very important too.
Thank you, Joseph Burns. Thank you for your willingness to come on the show, share your experience, and also help send messages out to both those who are hiring and those who are in the process. So I love everything that you shared today, and we will let you know when this is coming out. If those of you listening, please make sure that you follow Joseph. His content is great, and kudos to your content team for helping you find your voice and bringing it to us. And also, please, if you like this episode, please go ahead and put an Apple Podcast review together, because this is how we are growing and how we are getting to the top 1%. Thank you so much, Joseph.
I love joining you. I love talking with you, and I love talking about recruiting. So anybody out there that's building a team or looking to find the right things that they need to build the proper culture, I love to talk about it. It's my passion. So I'm always here. Okay.
Appreciate you. Appreciate that too. All right. Take it easy.
Perfect. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining today. We appreciate your listening ears. Big time. We ask this: use these tools, not tomorrow, right now, and share them by spreading the love, leaving us a rating and subscribe so you don't miss the next career blast and a half. Most of all, thank you for you.